I had one rule I never broke. No intimacy before the third date. But then I met Mike. We clicked instantly, and I broke that rule. What I didn't expect was my best friend's reaction. Jess, my childhood best friend, accused me of having a thing for disabled people. I was stunned, hurt, and honestly, confused. Jess and I have been inseparable since elementary school. We've been through heartbreaks, career changes, family drama, you name it. She's been my anchor, my sister in everything but blood. So when I met Mike at a conference, I never thought it would threaten our friendship. Mike is brilliant, funny, and full of life. He uses a wheelchair due to an accident years ago, but that didn't change how attractive or confident he was. We talked the entire night. It was natural, deep, real. We saw each other again, and before I knew it, our relationship accelerated faster than I'd expected. When I told Jess about Mike, she was surprised, then gradually distant. And then, one day, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Are you dating him because he's in a wheelchair? Do you have a fetish for disabled people or something?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This wasn't just ignorance. It felt like betrayal. I started questioning myself. Was I doing something wrong? Was I being inconsiderate? Exploitative? But deep down, I knew the truth. I liked Mike for who he was, not because of his wheelchair. Still, Jess's words echoed in my mind, making me feel shame where there shouldn't have been any. That was the beginning of a very emotional journey, one where I'd faced judgment, misunderstandings, and the possibility of losing someone I thought would always be on my side. After Jess's harsh comment, I left our meetup in silence. I didn't know what to say. It felt like everything I thought I knew about her, about us, was suddenly uncertain. Later that night, Mike noticed something was off. I tried to hide it, but he could tell. So I told him the truth. Not just what Jess said, but how it made me feel. Ashamed, embarrassed, angry. He looked at me calmly and said, "This isn't the first time someone's made assumptions about me or about the people I date." And just like that, I realized how much he must have carried his entire life. Judgment from strangers, biases from friends, doubts, even from the people he trusted. I felt horrible, not just for what Jess said, but because I hadn't defended him, or us. That night, I saw Mike in a whole new light. Not as a guy in a wheelchair, not as someone different, but as someone strong enough to face daily prejudice and still lead with love. We stayed up talking till sunrise, not just about Jess, but about life, our dreams, our fears, our past heartbreaks. That night, I knew I didn't just like Mike. I was falling in love with him. A few days later, I asked Jess to meet. I needed to talk things through. I believed, hoped, our friendship could survive this. When we sat down, she didn't apologize. Instead, she doubled down. "I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking. You've changed. You're acting like he's some kind of inspiration project." That's when I realized. She didn't just misunderstand Mike. She misunderstood me. S wasn't the friend I thought she was. Or maybe she had always been this way, and I'd just never seen it until now. It broke my heart. 7 years of friendship, dozens of late-night talks, and in one moment, it all felt so far away. But I wasn't going to let her opinion shape my future. Mike deserved better. And honestly, so did I. This wasn't just about a misunderstanding. It was about growing up, standing firm, and choosing love over comfort. After that conversation, I stopped trying to fix things with Jess. It hurt, more than I expected. She had been there through everything, my first heartbreak, my graduation, even when my dad passed away. But now, she was a stranger to me. Not because we fought, but because she refused to see me, the real me. And worse, she refused to see Mike as a full person. What surprised me most was the support that came from people I didn't expect. My coworkers, who barely knew Mike, loved him after one dinner party. My cousin, who's usually blunt to a fault, said, "You've never looked happier. Keep him." Even my mom, who can be conservative, told me she admired how kind and grounded Mike was. It was Jess who was out of step, not me. As for Mike and me, we kept growing stronger. We traveled, nothing too crazy, but memorable. We went to a cabin in the mountains, and Mike taught me how to fish. He told the worst jokes, and I laughed harder than I had in years. He met my family officially. My dad's old workshop wasn't wheelchair accessible, so Mike surprised us by designing ramps and donating to a local disability initiative. People saw his heart, and that mattered more than anything else. One night, I brought up our beginning, how he broke my third date rule. I laughed nervously, expecting a smirk, but Mike just smiled and said, "I knew that night that I was falling for you. I just didn't think someone like you would ever fall for someone like me." I was stunned, because to me, he was the kind of person anyone should fall for. Strong, funny, smart, compassionate, and above all, real. With time, the sting of losing Jess began to fade. I no longer checked my phone hoping she'd reach out, and I didn't blame myself anymore for what happened. I realized this. Sometimes we outgrow people, not because they're bad, but because we're growing in different directions. And that's okay. Wasn't just building a relationship with Mike. I was rebuilding myself, not the rule-following, approval-seeking version of me, but someone who could stand tall in her choices, even when it hurt. One afternoon, Mike and I went to a restaurant we'd never tried before. As we approached the entrance, a staff member asked us to use the back door because wheelchairs make the front look crowded. I froze. Mike simply nodded and turned his chair around, but I could see it in his eyes. He was tired of the microaggressions, the stares, the special treatment that was anything but kind. Inside, I wanted to scream, but Mike held my hand and whispered, "Pick your battles. This one's not worth our peace tonight." I admired his strength, but it also made me ache for the everyday battles he had to fight just to exist with dignity. Later that night, I broke down, not because of the restaurant, but because I realized how much pressure he carried in silence. I asked him if he ever wished he were normal. He looked at me for a long time and said, "I am normal. This chair is part of me, not a curse." That changed everything for me. That was the moment I stopped loving Mike for his resilience and started loving him just for being who he was, not in spite of his disability, not because of it, just because he was Mike. I also realized love without pity is the most honest kind. A few weeks later, I got a text from Jess. It just said, "I miss you." I was wrong. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't know how to respond. Did I want her back in my life? Was this real growth or just guilt? I waited a day, then replied, "I miss you too, but things have changed. I have changed. If we talk, it has to come from a place of respect for me and for Mike." We met for coffee that weekend. Jess looked nervous. She fidgeted with her cup and finally said, "I let my own issues cloud my judgment. I felt you were growing without me, and I lashed out." I appreciated the honesty. We talked for hours. It wasn't easy, but it was raw, honest, human. By the end, I told her I forgave her, not because she asked, but because I needed to let it go. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it makes room for something new. I still didn't know what Jess and I would become, friends again, or just two people with shared history. But I knew this. I was no longer living to please others. I was living for love, truth, and peace. 6 months later, everything felt different. Mike and I had moved in together. It wasn't glamorous. We had to modify the apartment, rework the layout, and learn to navigate life as a team. But we were happy. There were hard days, sure. Days when Mike's shoulders ached or I was emotionally exhausted from being his advocate in spaces that still didn't understand. But we faced it together. No shame, no fear, no pretending. Jess and I weren't best friends anymore, but we did rebuild something. Not the old friendship, but a more honest one, less sugar-coated, more respectful. She started dating someone new, a quiet guy who worked in IT, and she even asked me questions about accessibility and unconscious bias. It felt hopeful. It showed me people can grow, even the ones who hurt us. Sometimes, I think about who I used to be. The girl who had a list of dating rules, who cared way too much about what her friends thought, who thought love had to look a certain way to be valid. I wish I could hug her and say, "It's okay to break your own rules. It's okay to fall in love differently. And it's okay to lose people if it means finding yourself." Mike gave me something no man ever had. Not flowers or promises or over-the-top gestures. He gave me peace and the freedom to be fully me. He never made me feel like I had to shrink myself. He never saw my past as baggage. And he never once made me question my worth. That's the kind of love I didn't even know I deserved until I lived it. If you're listening to this and you're afraid of what others will think, if you're falling for someone society says is different, if you're questioning a friendship that no longer feels right, please hear me when I say, your love is not weird. Your standards are allowed to evolve. And the bravest thing you can do is choose what makes you feel alive. Mike and I aren't perfect. We still argue about laundry, and he still teases me for how I cry during every Pixar movie. But I've never been more sure of anything in my life. I chose love. Real, raw, powerful love. And I'd break every rule all over again if it meant finding him. Thank you for listening to our story. If it touched you, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your story, too.